Mel, welcome to the show.
Wow, Sarah, thanks for having me.
I am so excited to chat with you today. But before we dive into our conversation, I want you to share with people what do you do and who are you?
I think my mom's still trying to figure out what do I do.
Same. My parents, same thing.
I'm a CPA by education, but I've been an entrepreneur for decades. I fell in love with the whole entrepreneur journey, and so that's really partly what I am. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a granddad now, I'm a puppy dad, and I work with entrepreneurs to help them get their financial stuff straightened out. Too often we get into business and we find ourselves sucked into the treadmill of business, thinking that that's the solution, is just to run faster, run harder, run longer. And even if it's not entrepreneurship, it can be that way in a job, just the same. And we think that the job or the business is there to give us our freedom. And it's not. It's there to have an impact. It's there to service us. It's there to create solutions in the world. It's there to create cash flow in your world. And it's how we use the cash flow that gives us freedom. We all, whether we are in a job or we're entrepreneurs, need to think in the context of how do we build a money machine that's going to take care of us. God forbid things happen, and plan for that. And that's really where I spend a lot of my time these days, is working with folks and entrepreneurs, especially to help them understand the intersection of business, money, and life.
Oh, and I love that because I've shared with you before is that I love listening to your podcast, love checking out all your resources because they provide so much value. And, recently I was listening and hearing you talk to parents about how they should really begin to start educating their kids. And, one of the phrases that you said was money lessons are caught, not taught. And my mind exploded because I thought, how are we educating our students, and in particular for the parents who listen to the podcast, as we go on this journey of saying we're going to play sports in college or we're going to move on to the next level and go to college?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. If we just ask ourselves the question, no matter where we are, where did I learn about money from? Was it intentional? Because most of the time it's not. I'm an accountant, so some of it was intentional, but even that was academic. It wasn't money stuff. It was some business stuff. And most of that stuff wasn't used in my journey either. So it's like, you kind of go, well, what are we doing? And so the reality is that most of the stuff we gain from money, around money, is observed, because we're told as we're growing up, it's impolite to talk about money. Don't talk about money. Don't ask about money, those kinds of things. And we've actually demonized a tool. It's like, would you demonize a hammer? Would you demonize a screwdriver? Would you demonize a knife? It's not the tool itself that causes positive or negative. It is the use of the tool that creates positive or negative. And yet we want to demonize the tool because it's easy, versus looking at the intent and everything behind it. So I think it really becomes important to understand that since we called money taboo, we don't talk about it, including with our kids, including with our youth. And the reality is that I think we're doing a great travesty to our youth to not have these conversations, because we could set them up for financial independence early on, where they don't have to think about things like Social Security. They don't have to think about those things if we do it right and are willing to have open, real conversations, not about the material things that money bring, but the purpose behind money, because money is a result. It's not a purpose.
Yeah. And I'm just kind of thinking about, parents who are listening and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to pay for all of these private soccer lessons or private hitting lessons to get their kid to the next level. But they're not talking to their kids about the cost of all of these things.
Right.
And we're not having the conversation of what are the parents having to do to be able to put their kid in this position. And, even the parents trying to think about how can I set them up for success, but what questions or what conversations do we start to teach these kids a skill set about money?
So I think the important thing here is not just to have conversations, make it real. I know that a lot of parents will sit back and say, well, I'm going to give them an allowance. No, give them a commission.
Oh, yeah.
Give them a commission that is performance-based. Get them to understand that that commission that they're getting is not for them to just use without regard to anything, but that there's actually a purpose behind the money. Jeremy, my son, when he was 11, I put him on commission. And from that commission, he would pay for his clothes. He would pay for his school, his food, his lunches. He would make donations, and he would start savings. So we created a process that allowed us to live into it and have real conversations about it. So he would feel the pain of sitting back and saying, I don't want to spend this. So we're viscerally teaching them to have those conversations, and then to see the joy of a charity and those kinds of things. We can talk about it with our kids, but sometimes, like it or not, our parents talk to the kids. It's like wow, 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 wow. It's like, and they don't hear it. When they feel it, when they experience it, now you have different conversations.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, because I'm even kind of thinking about, in my world, working one-on-one with students from an academic perspective. I may say something 17 times in meetings, and then until something happens and they experience it, then it's like, oh, I got it. And it's the same way in a learning process of, we just don't reread to understand something. We actually have to talk through it and look at the words and jump off the page and say, here's what the concept that I'm getting. And I hear you kind of applying that same thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I think that when we experience something, we take it in at the cellular level, viscerally. I mean, it is embedded into us, because it's a very different thing. Because now all of a sudden, you don't have just an intellectual or audio trigger because it was told to you or because you read it. It is a muscle trigger. It is an experience. It's a feeling. It hits all the senses, and therefore it's retained more.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I'm thinking of our student athletes who, they're getting up to bat and they take that swing and they nail it, and they know this is the swing I need. And they recreate that every single time. And we get that muscle memory going and knowing this is what it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's, and then I kind of go, well, okay, then how do parents then take it to the next step of have this conversation of their kid going off to college? Because you and I both know college is expensive. Mm-hmm. And we also know in the student athlete world that the probability of getting a full ride is really slim to none.
Yeah.
Because there's only 6 sports that are head count sports, which we talk about on the show: men's football, men's and women's basketball, women's tennis, women's gymnastics, and women's volleyball. If you're not in those 6 and you're trying to go to Division I, you might get a couple $1,000s, maybe books, but then all these other expenses are going to happen. How do parents navigate this if you're looking at this skill set?
So this, so I'm hesitating because I'm going to say something that it probably doesn't directly answer your question, but I'm going to put it on the parents to start thinking about this. And that is this: is the reason that we really want them to go to college for them or for you?
Oh, that's good.
Because owning a martial arts studio for 11 years, I would see parents, and I saw myself possibly falling into that. And I realized that I shook myself out of it. Is that, am I trying to put my dreams on them, on the children, and live vicariously through them? It's a tough question, but I think it is something. Let's assume that that's not the case, but I think that we ought to think that way, because for your children to truly excel in college, they got to be fully vested in it. And they won't be fully vested in it if they feel like they're being forced into it. And I think that, as a parent, I'm not one that says, if it's tough, okay, you're okay, I'm gonna push you through it. So I don't want the kids to quit just because it's tough, but I want to make sure that they're following their path guided by the parent. And then understanding that if that's truly the case, they, just like the conversations before, they actually have some involvement in it. Mm. It's not just about the sports. It's about, if you truly want to go to this school, whether it's, whatever, USC, Clemson, Georgia, whatever it is, if you really want to go to one of a bigger school and everything, there is a cost to it. Yeah. And like it or not, a parent isn't required to pay for your child's education. And I know it's hard because you want to, I want to, and I get it. But in the process of trying to pay for a child's education, you forsake your financial future. It's a mistake, because your child may go to school, may go to college, they may graduate college, they may not graduate college, they may not, and if all you do is you're focused on, I'm paying for college, I'm paying for college, I'm paying for college, and you don't put anything away for yourself, listen, your retirement, it's coming. Mm-hmm. Their college, we don't know if it's coming. Hopefully it is. But I think that we need to be real about that. And I would prioritize your financial future over paying for their college, going into debt for their college, and then have the conversations with them to say, you have the ability to affect this. Yes. And that is how you do in school. Mm-hmm. So in those junior high and high school years, you're sitting back and saying, if you truly want to get to this point, you have a say in it. You have a play in it. And one of the things that I did with Jeremy also is that I always met him halfway. So when it came to getting his first car, I said, I'll match what you save. I'll match, because then they have skin in the game. Then they have a vested interest. So if all we did with our children is say, I'll meet you halfway, but in order to get in this college, here's what you need to come to the table with: these grades, this kind of work, this kind of perspective, and then I'll come to the table with these things. So you make an agreement. If they don't live up to their agreement, that's on them. Yeah. And they need to understand that there isn't an entitlement to make that happen, but it's earned. And it's a life lesson. It's something that they ought to realize. And also, if the reason for them to go to a big school is because, oh my gosh, I love the mascot, who cares? Right. Okay. There has to, look, a school is an investment. Yes. And this is the accountant side of me coming out. There has to be a return on that investment. Mm-hmm. And so you don't just go to a school because you like the mascot. That's a recipe for disaster. You go to a school because you're going to get a return on the investment you put in. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you that, like my son, so he started his own business at 16, and he was 3 years or so into his college career. And I was out speaking, and I get a text from him saying, Dad, I'm not sure that this college thing is good for me. It's not helping me any. And I got the business going and everything. So I'm not sure that I want to go back next year. And he did this to me in a text.
Oh my gosh.
So I sent him a text back going, we'll talk when I get home.
Yeah, this is not text message conversation.
So when I got home, I said, dude, I am more than happy to support your adult decisions. However, if you're making an adult decision, you can't make it halfway. You make it all the way. So if you truly say, I don't want to go to school, that's fine. But now you take over your whole car. You take over paying rent. You take over all of these things because you want to be an adult. I totally get it. And I'm totally fine with it. I think it took him about a day and a half to go, Dad, another year of college is probably not that big of a deal. And he finished. Does he use his degree? Probably not. However, one of the biggest benefits, I think, of college, especially for athletes, but for everyone, is to start something big and finish something big.
Yes. Yes.
Let's face it. Some of the education, some of the classes that they're forced to take, we were forced to take, I don't use it. There was no value in it.
Yeah.
And it was like, check the box. Okay, you got it. Life skills, we don't teach them. Why don't we teach money stuff in college? It's an elective. Come on, it should be required.
Right.
Yet we want to teach them things that they'll likely never use. And so I think that there is a tremendous qualitative value, return on investment to it, but at the same time, you got to look at the economics.
Yeah. Oh, and one of the things that I love that you've been sharing lately, especially since you have become a grandfather, is something that is called the Emily factor. So could you share with our audience a little bit about first of all, what is the Emily factor and how can parents start using this with their students?
So here's the thing. Someone asked me, so my little granddaughter, little Princess Emily, was born August 2nd of this year. So she's 3 months old tomorrow. And someone said, what would you tell your son as a brand new dad on the money side of things? And what are you going to do as a granddad for little Emily? I said, here's what I'm going to do. I said, the day she's born, I'm putting $500 into an account. And then I'm going to put $25 a week away until she's 20 years old. Okay. And I'll put that in some broad-based ETF or index fund. It'll typically return 8% or so. But after 20, there's no more money being put in at all. Now, the important element of this is so in the end, I'm going to put away $24,000, about $24,500. So that's all I ever give her. Okay. But during that time, we teach her the skill set. Too often we're thinking about giving assets to our kids, passing on the assets. We don't need to pass on assets. We need to pass on skill sets. And so during her 20 years, the first 20 years of life, we have money conversations. We get her to understand some of the principles of investing. We get her to realize that her financial freedom is at her fingertips. We get her to understand how easy it could be, how simple it could be to make that happen. And in hopes that what she does is she takes that $24,500 that granddad and grandma put away and leaves it alone. Mm-hmm. Lets it invest, lets it invest and grow. That $24,500 by the age 20 will be about $37,000. Not much, but it's still more. It's still a 60% increase. Actually, it'll be 61,000 now that I think about it. So 36,000 of it will be earned. So there's a 60% increase over and above what you put in. But if she left it in there till she was age 30, that 24,000 turns into 136,000. She left it in there for another decade to age 40. It's now 300,000. One more decade to age 50. It's now close to $700,000. And then she sits back and says, I'm just going to retire on granddad. And I'm going to leave it in there until I'm retirement age. So at age 60, that $24,000 turns into almost $1.5 million. Wow. This is the thing that most people don't realize. They're so focused on using money to create wealth. What we really need to do is use time to create wealth, because time is the greatest lever of wealth building at all. Literally $25 a week, and I set my granddaughter up for life if she gets the skills.
Right. And so thinking of this, so say parents, maybe they want to do something very similar because, they didn't start it when their kid or was born and they're thinking, I want to do a little something like this now. Is it something they need to go ahead and consider now? Because they still have a little bit of time. There maybe have missed half of that time, but there's still some time to do it.
Well, so here's the way you look at it. And because that's not, yes, the answer is yes. You start wherever you're at.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Is it going to grow as much as it would like in this example? Not necessarily, because you don't have the same length of a lever time that I embedded in here. But by the same token, you can offset some of the costs by starting to invest. And more importantly, if you teach your children the same concepts when they're, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, and they themselves start the process, they can recreate the same process. When they make savings and investing a priority over the wearing labels, satisfying social media, looking at what their neighbors are wearing, doing those things, they will change their life forever. And they actually will be able to look back and go, I'm far better off. Mm-hmm. It's not about looking wealthy. It's about being wealthy.
Yeah. That's such great lessons for parents to, and again, going back to that, what you said, like we want to teach skill set, not give assets. And when they have that, then it's going to make such a big difference in their lives.
It's so much so. If we can train them, if we can make the idea of just money management a core element to our conversations, we take the burden off. There's a couple things that happen. One is they ain't coming back home at 30 years old going, hang on a minute, can I live in the basement a little while? So you don't have them coming back home because most of them will somewhere stray. I did, credit cards on campus and all that stuff. I did, my brother did, but the core values will surface over time in most cases. And we that is far more valuable than simply stroking a check and saying, I'll pay for your education.
Such great wisdom in thinking about that and what parents and the conversations parents can start to have now with their kids. Well, Mel, the podcast is called Confessions from the Sidelines.
Yep.
And I ask this question to everybody, so I want to hear your answer. Is what's your favorite memory of either standing on the sidelines or just watching others succeed?
God. So for me, I think it's really watching them flourish in adversity. Mm. That when things got difficult, they don't quit. I know that. So I had the martial arts studio for 11 years. And one of the things that we would do is when they tested, and I was trained in Japan. So I was classically trained by my sensei was 17th generation samurai. So it was very different. Discipline was different in his dojo in Japan than it would be in America. I would get sued. Okay. But when we tested them for black belts in our school, no one got handed about it. They couldn't write a big enough check that they were going to earn it. And part of it was they had to do a charity day. So they had to do that. But the other part of it was they had to go through this test that was literally 4.5 hours. So they do all the techniques, they do all the forms, they do all of that. They spar every single black belt. And the last one they spar is me. Mm. And they had to last with me for 3 minutes. But my black belt instructors knew that their job was to put them on the edge of collapse. And so that's what they did. And so then I would go up. Now, some parents thought I was abusive, okay, because they didn't understand it until the end. And so then my job, I get up there and I look at them. I said, it's 180 seconds. That's all you need to do. This isn't about beating me. This is about getting through it. Give me everything else you got. Like they're in tears, pushing. And every single one of them got through it because I would adjust where I was going, but I wanted them on the edge. And then when they came down to it and they said, I have them take their belts off, and I look at them. I said, "It's a long test, right?" They said, "Yeah." I said, 4.5 hours, crazy, right? They said, "Yeah." I said, "Nope, the test was 3 minutes."
Yeah.
It took me 4.5 hours to prepare you. The problem is that in life, you're going to get to that point that you got here where you say, "I can't go any further. I got nothing left in me." But you did. Mm. And this will be one of the first reference points you have when life gets in the way, when it's health, when it's relationships, when it's work, when it's something else where you think you have nothing left, but now you have the ability to reach down and say, "I did it once, I can do it again." Just find that 3 minutes again. This is your first reference point. It's seeing them elevate to beyond what they thought they could do that I think sitting on the sidelines is a really cool place to be.
It is one of my favorite places to be. And I have seen hundreds and almost thousands of student athletes get to that point that you're talking about and push through to that other side. And brings me so much joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're a new person.
Yes.
On the other side of it, and they will never go back.
You're exactly right. And I just love it. I love that experience of seeing them to becoming who that they're meant to be too.
Yeah.
It's so cool. Well, Mel, what if people want to follow along with you? I know you have some fantastic resources. Where do they find you online, on social media?
Well, I guess one is my show, the Affluent Entrepreneur Show. That's a weekly show that we talk money. And for me, it's not just me teaching. I want people to bring me their questions. I want to help you find that place of financial independence. I truly believe financial independence is a birthright. We're just never taught how to claim it. Yeah. And so the show, Instagram, Mel Abraham 9, the number 9. I don't know who the first 8 are, but I couldn't get Mel Abraham. So, and then on my website, melabraham.com, there's plenty of resources there. And like I said, follow me, reach out to me, say hello, send questions, and we'll bring them on the show or and have you and see what we can do to help out.
And we'll be sure to include all of those links in the show notes so that you guys can go hang out with Mel online. Mel, thank you again so much for being here.
Oh my God. Thanks for having me, Sarah. This was great. And, bless you for doing what you're doing and keeping our youth pointed in the right direction. I think that they're certainly the future of our country. And with what you do, you provide a level of hope for a new future.
Thank you so much for saying that.